Yeah, I think this is a very good aspect because in Bangladesh, it's not for the political parties alone. In Bangladesh, we tend to avoid responding to the research findings. Research are done by academics and professionals just to be forgotten. Because I know some of my colleagues sitting here could comment on, we do a lot of research and we really disseminate and try to give it to the right people. In most cases, they appreciate it, but they don't act upon it. So research has become a ritual thing for them because any smart person should do research, so you have a research, we are happy with that, but they don't engage. Even at the government policy level, we have been hired sometime to do research for them and we provide a report to them. Sometimes they really appreciate that, but we don't see any reflection in their actions. So this research consciousness is most probably lacking in our psyche. At the same time, also they've been blaming many of us that well our research are not high quality. Some research are really not high quality. So this is something that we have to prepare ourselves, that we have to do research. Many of the research are not really that good quality. So you have to really have a very good quality research to impress and to really draw the attention. Look, this is not just a piece of report, it matters.
All right.
Quality is to ensure.
Thank you, Dr. Salahuddin, for a very interesting first session today. It spurs a lot of discussion. I got about, I think, 25 questions here, and more are still coming. Yeah. Apologies for not being able to read all of this, but we do have a conference website that's online now. We have, I don't know how many viewers viewing us from the internet, and what we will do is we will type up all these questions and put it on the website, and then we'll send the link to everybody as a follow-up. On the next session, we're going to continue the discussion about professionalization of politics in Indonesia. We call it, in the session we discuss modernization. We have questions about sample size, quality of surveys. So in the next sessions, we will discuss this further. Again, thank you very much. A big round of applause for Dr. Salahuddin. Okay, for the next session, I would invite Ms. Selinda Lake. Oh, you want to go first? Oh, okay, yes. I would like to invite Mr. Muhammad Kodari to take the seat. 2 minutes break to prepare the presentation. Thank you. Maybe even shorter. Is Mr. Muhammad Kodari. I've known him for more than 10 years now. Although, most of the time I'm just following him and his political analyst through the television and internet. So he is the executive director of Indobarometer, Indonesia's leading political consulting and public opinion survey firm. He's written numerous analysis, predictions, and of course, conducted numerous studies, public opinion surveys on Indonesian politics. And we're so fortunate to have him here, although only for a short period of time. And he will share the Indonesian experience, the professionalization of political parties and politics in Indonesia's democracy. Please give a big round of applause, Mr. Muhammad Kodari.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. This is how we usually address the audience in Indonesia in a seminar, because the majority of population in Indonesia is also Muslim. We always say Assalamualaikum, and the audience usually answer Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Dr. Salahuddin, your presentation was very interesting. So after hearing your presentation, I suggest to Selinda if I may step forward and speak earlier than her, because I believe that Bangladesh is more or less like Indonesia. We are developing countries, and Indonesia is experiencing a democracy no later than perhaps 15 years. So it is something new. democracy is quite something new in Indonesia, and I think what we experience in Indonesia may give some examples for you guys and for you people in Bangladesh. Okay, let me begin my presentation with the map of Indonesia. Because I believe that not many of you really know Indonesia. So let me begin with the map of Indonesia. This is the map of Indonesia. It is a very, very big country. If you fly from here to the other end, which is here, it will take around 9 hours. Yes, that's right. It's very big countries. So I live here in Jakarta. If I want to go here, it will take 3 hours. If I want to go to Papua or Irian Jaya, it will take 9 hours. Okay, it's very big countries. 2 million squares. Yeah, 2 million squares of land. And I was born here in Sumatra, and I spent my childhood here in Kalimantan. And my work makes me travel all over Indonesia. Terus dikit, continue dikit. Indonesia is also a very multicultural country. You see, this is the picture of Indonesian tribe. This is Javanese. This is Papua. This is Minangkabau. I believe Diki is Ayu Betawi.
I'm a mod, yeah.
Huh?
I'm mixed.
Oh, you are mixed. Okay, you are mixed. So he is made of all of this. He is made of all of this. And you know that in Indonesia there are 300 tribes and 300 languages. Wow. Although thanks to our founding fathers, now we can speak one language through the archipelago, that is Indonesia. So Indonesia is the lingua franca. It is the bridge between people from Java, from Sumatra, from Kalimantan, to speak and understand each other. By showing you this map, I want to also show you that research public opinion survey can be done in such a vast and multicultural countries. I heard that Bangladesh is not that vast, it's not that big. Diki told me maybe Bangladesh is only part of Java. It's only part of Java. So you know that Java is much smaller than Sumatra, Kalimantan, and Papua. It can be done in Indonesia, and I believe it can be done here in Bangladesh. Proceed. Okay, these two pictures are the pictures of Indonesian important leaders. You see, for around, almost 50 years, Indonesia was ruled by only 2%. Yeah. The first is Sukarno, yeah, the declarator of independence, a great orator, a very handsome guy, and he has 9 wives. He had 9 wives. Okay. How many do you? Okay. And this is General Suharto, the late Suharto. He ruled the country for 30 years. He was a former military general. And during his tenure, Indonesia was held under the authoritarian rule. Under the authoritarian rule, the military officers control many aspects of society and the state. They become the ministers. 80% of the governors are from military background. You know, Indonesia, we have layers of government. The top is the central government, and then we go to provincial level. There are now 30 provinces all over Indonesia, and below provinces we have districts and cities. Right now around 500. I miss the counting because it keeps growing. The number is growing and growing. And then we have sub-districts around maybe 5,000 or 6,000. And then the lowest level of government, which is villages. There are how many villages in Bangladesh? Do you know? Anybody can tell me?
68,000.
68,000. Okay, quite many, yeah, because in Indonesia there are around 70,000 villages. And the population is right now perhaps 240 millions. And the registered voters for the last election in 2009 was 170 million people. 170 million people. So like Bangladesh population. As I mentioned earlier, during Suharto years, for 30 years, Indonesia was under the authoritarian rule. And in 1998, there was a reform movement, which is basically the movement against the authoritarian rule. And one of the results at the time was the fall of Suharto, the topple of Suharto. And the other aspect or the other important change after the reform era was the change in political system, Professor Salahuddin. It used to be closed, and then suddenly it becomes open, very, very wide open. No longer restriction on freedom of expression, the media are free, and most important are there was the so-called free and fair election. During Suharto era, indeed, the government conducts elections 5 times, but it was called it was not considered free because government controls the organizing committee, and then out of 3 contestants, 3 political parties, one was heavily favored by the government. Yeah, was heavily favored by the government. So you don't have to conduct opinion survey to predict the winner. The winner is certain. Yeah, even before the election is held at the time, Okay. So during the time, there was no necessity to conduct political surveys, public opinion survey. Yeah, no need whatsoever. Because if you publish an opinion pollings, it can be considered as criticizing the government. And more important, if you have result from survey showing that the people favors, let's say, policy number A, but the government favors the policy number B, then they will go ahead with policy number B instead. Yeah, yeah. Instead, they don't care what you think. Yeah, they just go ahead implement what they want to do. So drastically in 1998, Indonesia became a democracy, one of the biggest democracy in the world. In democracy, as Professor Salahuddin already mentioned, what people think and feel does really matter. Yeah, does really matter. And it was facilitated by the change in the system, Professor. So there was the question, how in Bangladesh people can expect the political party to listen more to the people, how they want to become moderate. I would suggest one of the things to make them change their behavior or their thinking is by changing the system. Yeah. Of course, they are also the one who make the system, but people, interest group, academician and the media can also push the reform agenda, the change in the system. So when the system changes, they will have to alternate, they will have to. Ladies and gentlemen, public opinion becomes important. Yeah. First, as I mentioned earlier, because now the election is free. Yeah. If you don't listen to the people, you are going to lose. I'm going to give you some example. And then in 2004, election 2004, public opinion is is strongly facilitated again by the implementation of direct president election. Yeah, I heard that Bangladesh used to have the so-called presidential system and then it alters into the parliamentary system. Indonesia is vice versa. A long time ago it was a parliamentary democracy, but because the government come and go, yeah, in very short time, and then it changed to presidential system. In 2005, there was an introduction of direct election of governors and region mayor. So you can imagine in Indonesia, every year there are at least 125 elections of mayors and governors and head of the district. So we have election everywhere in Indonesia, every day in the newspaper. Yeah, and also in my office, because those candidates are my clients, you know. Okay. And in 2009, yeah, again, public opinion was having more opportunity because member of parliament candidate with the biggest vote win the seat. You know, previously people are urged to vote for the political party, and the people who is going to the parliamentary building is the one who is on the top of the list. So even you have lesser vote than the people below your list, but then you are going to the parliamentary hall. That does not happen again in 2009. So you cannot sit back and relax because you are number one on the list. Yeah, that does not guarantee you to become the chosen one. Yeah, you have to work hard. You have to go to the people. You have to invite clients. Yeah, in my waiting list. Go ahead. Well, we have many roles of public opinions. Yeah, Prof. Salahuddin already mentioned many aspects that can be helped by conducting public opinion research. I just want to mention, yeah, some of them. The role of survey in election first is to identify support for political parties, and of course to formulate strategy for victory. We are going to listen Selinda, yeah, telling us about this later, right, Selinda? Okay. Second, to identify support for MP candidates, yeah, and formulate strategy for the victory as well, if you are also a political consultant. Okay. Three, to identify support for presidential candidate, yeah, and to formulate strategy for victory for them, yeah. Okay. And the fourth, to identify support for governor or mayor candidates. The role of survey in public policy. Okay, so we are not just talking about the function of public opinion for, let's say, pragmatic purposes, but also for ideal purposes, which is for public policy. Yeah, I'll give you three examples of my experience in Indonesia. Yeah, in the case of government decision to raise fuel price, in drafting legislative election law, and to know, yeah, what is people thinking about reform movement and democracy in Indonesia after, yeah, 13 years of reform in Jakarta or in Indonesia. Okay. Okay. This I'm going to tell you about how yeah, public opinion surveys indeed determines the fate of political parties. So hopefully there are people from PNP, from Awami League, and from other political parties in this room. So you can hear from me, from Indonesian experience, how important public opinion is. Okay, in 2002-2003, yeah, we conducted a survey which showed that PDIP, one of the biggest political party, the head of PDIP is the daughter of Sukarno, yeah, that PDIP will lose and Golkar will regain power. You know that in 1999, yeah, the first democratic election after the authoritarian rule, PDIP won, yeah, PDIP won with 33% of vote. So 1/3 of the vote went to PDIP. Golkar, as the party of the old regime of Suharto, was toppled. During the New Order era, Golkar wins the majority, 60%, 70% of the vote. Very dominant, yeah, because it is an orchestrated election, not a pure election. And then suddenly, Golkar slided down, yeah, even crashed to 20%, yeah, not as low as many activists expected at the time. Some of them predicted that Golkar is going to vanish, yeah, going to extinction, yeah, because people no longer wanted the old regime. But yeah, somehow Golkar remained. They survived. They were the second winner at the time. So you know, in 2003, I joined LSI, one of the first political polling institution in Indonesia. At the time, we conduct surveys, and it showed that PDIP is going to lose, and Golkar will regain power again. At the time, only one political party wanted to listen to our presentation. Yeah. Maybe the I in Bangladesh also experienced the same thing. You offer presentation to political parties, some of them open the door for you, some of them rejects you. Maybe there are more rejections than the open door. And the political party that opened door for us at the time was, ladies and gentlemen, you guess, is Golkar Party. Yeah. So in preparation for the elections, they invited candidates from all over Indonesia. So they conduct three conventions. Each convention was with the audience of 300 people. So in all, they invited 1,000 candidates from all over Indonesia. We were given the opportunity to give the presentation, to give information, what is the finding of the result, why Golkar again is number one, which is actually their disappointment toward the performance of PDIP. You know, in 2001, PDIP leader Megawati became the president. So people are not satisfied with performance of Megawati as president. And in turn, they didn't vote for PDIP again. They voted for Golkar. So they are disappointed with the current government, and they are looking back again to Golkar. Oh, Golkar was better than PDIP, so we are going to vote for Golkar again. PDIP did not want to listen to survey. Yeah, did not want to listen to survey. Why? Do you know why? Because they don't believe survey. They say, Mr. Kodari, how come you interview 1,200% and you can tell what the population think, which was around 140 at the time, 140 million voters at the time. It's impossible, my brother. It's impossible, my friend. You cannot ask 1,000 people and you get to know the whole population. Yeah, from Aceh to Papua, 9 hours of flight. Yeah. They don't want to listen to us, and they get the consequences. They lost. They lost. So you have to listen to pollsters, because pollsters can predict what your fate is becoming. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Another example. In December 23, survey revealed that PKB, this is one of the traditional Muslim party in Indonesia, vote will decrease. Yeah. The head of PKB at the time was Gus Dur. Yeah. Gus Dur supporter was angry with me. That was very dangerous, you know. Because they are militant. Yeah. This is a rural based party, you know. Yeah, rural based party. Although at the time ironically, it was PKB who invited me to speak in their headquarters.
Wow.
Yeah. So I tell them, okay, this is our latest finding. PKB vote is going to decrease from 1999. In 1999, you secure votes of 12%. Now, according to our survey, your vote is going to be only 10%. So you're not increasing, but you're decreasing. Suddenly, there was a man from behind the audience pointing his hand, and then he stand up and he asked, he pointed at me, Mr. Kodari, I don't believe you. Yeah. What you do is human work. Yeah. According to God Baaf, yeah. So he said, according to the divine revelation, yeah, PKB is going to win. Yeah. So that was their references. PKB is the traditional Muslim based party. So they do not consult survey. They consult the Lord above. Yeah. And anyway, they know. Okay. So we are going to win. When I look at the man, oh, he was wearing the uniform. Yeah. So he was apa answer? Guardian.
Like
Semi-military guardian of the party. So I said to myself, I want to go home safely. So I did not argue against him anymore. So I told him in my heart, let's see who is right, whether the divine revelation or the human work. Okay. And it turns out later that year we were right. So the vote for KB was decreasing, only 10%, precisely. Okay. Again, more information. Yeah. In June 2008, support for Democrat Party was declining after fuel price hike. Yeah. In 2004, the president elected was Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono, or SBY. He is, as he usually referred to, and his Democrat Party the fuel price. We conducted the survey in June 2008 and get it published in the media. Yeah. The media in Indonesia, Prof. Salahuddin, is also owned by major companies. But luckily, there were many. So if you want to get the bottom line of the issue, you need to read many newspapers. That's what I do every day. So in my table, I have at least 9 newspapers.
Oh, geez.
Yes, 9 newspapers. And yeah, quite interesting. In many occasions, they publish different headlines.
Wow.
Or if they have the same headlines, the same thing, they publish different titles. Yeah.
Wow.
So many in favor of their own agenda. But if you read many newspapers, you get the bottom line of the issue. So our findings was published widely by the media. It was become the headline. It was become the talk of the town, let's say so. It happened that I went for a vacation in Bali. Oh yeah, I forgot. In Indonesia, there was a tourism destination which is very wonderful. It is called Bali. It is suggested at least once in your lifetime, you go to Bali.
Yeah.
Do you agree, Selinda?
I do.
Yeah, she did. Yeah, because she went there. Selinda did go to Bali. She never go to Jakarta. You know, it tells how important Bali than Jakarta is. And then there were calls from the minister of from the Cabinet,
The state secretary.
the state secretary, and then there was another call. Yeah. From the Secretary of State, and there was another call from the Minister of Information. So 3 minutes call me, Kodari, what the hell are you doing? Yeah, you published a survey, yeah, that saw people frustration about the fuel price hike. You make the president angry. Yeah, I heard that the president was indeed angry, and he bangs the table. What the hell is Kodari? Why is he angry? Yeah, because he is my friend. I was with him during 2003 when he was still the minister. Yeah, when he was still the minister, and he aspired to become the president. Yeah, I'm going to tell this story later. So, I was in a vacation. I told the minister, sorry sir, I'm in a vacation with my son in Bali. Yeah, I will come back next week, and then I will see you. Yeah, if we have time. And then I meet the Minister of Information. I come to his office. He is new. He's new Minister of Government. He replaced the former minister. So he was actually new, and I was old. I mean, I know the situation better than him. So he said, what's the case? You serve government. You raise the fuel price without conducting survey or conducting research first. This is not the first time the government raised the fuel price. Yes. SBY became the president in 2004. In 2005, he has to raise the fuel price. And the minister at the time asked us to conduct opinion survey. The findings show that there was a widespread frustration against the rise, the hike. But the government had to do it anyway. We say to the government, don't do it right now, don't do it right away. You must formulate a program for public communication, yeah, so that people will understand. There is going to be a fuel price hike. Second, there is an explanation what government is going to do. And thirdly, there is a reason why government has to raise the fuel price. Now you raise the fuel price very high at the time, and you don't conduct any surveys whatsoever. And so, we conduct the survey, and we found out that the government reason that was mentioned to the media at the time was not accepted to the people. Yeah, the government said, the minister said, we are going to raise the fuel price because the price of oil in the world is increasing highly, rapidly. So we have to raise the price in the country because otherwise the subsidy will be too big for government to carry on. So I told him, the minister, you are wrong, sir. That's not acceptable to the people. If you tell the people government is going to raise the fuel price because the international price is also rising, the people will tell you, government, that's your problem. Yes, you are the government. Yeah, we choose you to become the government, become the high-ranking official in order for you to solve the problem. Yeah, okay. That's the people. The people is the king in Indonesia and in this country too. And the reason that is most acceptable by the people is that if the government, this is the finding from the survey, tells the people that our fellow citizen, we have to raise the fuel price in order to have more money, to give subsidy to the people, the grassroots level, for education, for health, and for other public facility. That's good, that's good. Yeah. People say, that's good. Oh, this is a very, very good government. They think about the lower people. That kind of reason was not mentioned by the government because they don't conduct the survey. So, finally the minister said to me, so Kodari, what are we going to do with the situation? The president is going to lose. I told him, firstly, sir, people anger will not last forever. Yeah. They will be angry for at least 3 months, and then they will calm down. They will reach a new equilibrium. And second, if possible, you try to formulate a program that can heal people, that can compensate for people loss, for people grievances. Yeah. So at the time they finally crafted the so-called cash subsidy mechanism, and then gradually president popularity increasing again, and in 2009, Democrat Party, the president's party, won the election, and then the president also re-elected again for the first time in Indonesia. So never before the president elected twice through the mechanism of direct election. Okay.
Mr. Kodari, we have 10 minutes to Q&A session.
Oh, okay. Well, so I was the contrary to Mr. Salahuddin. This is Gus Dur, yeah, you know. The one sitting there is Gus Dur. He is very informal president with his student or santri. Gus Dur, Mr. Kodari said that vote for PKB will decrease. What do you say? They say, as the divine revelation. Okay, go on. This is the second issue. Yeah. This is my story about how public opinion can determine the fate of presidential candidate. Okay, you give me too little time, Diki. In August 2003, Megawati still number 1. SBY was already runner-up. The same situation with political party. So the first presidential candidate who want to listen to public opinion survey was SBY. The other presidential candidate did not want to. Yeah. And we told SBY, sir, your problem is your name recognition. Your name recognition was still around 60%. While in order to be elected, you need a name recognition of 100%, which was Megawati and other strong contenders. So your homework, Mr. SBY, is how to increase your name recognition, because we have analyzed if your name recognition level is the same with Megawati, you are going to win, and that's what happened. In 2001, in May 2004, SBY was still number 1. Megawati. Okay. In May 2004, the election in July, so 2 months to go. SBY was number 1, Megawati was number 2, and Wiranto was number 3. We have predicted that it will not be settled in one round only, because in order to win the elections in one round, you need to acquire at least minimum 50% of vote. So we predicted that SBY, although he was number 1, he cannot secure more than 50%. So it is important for Wiranto and Megawati to become the second after Yudhoyono in order to go to the second round. Wiranto asked us to conduct survey. We told Pak Wiranto, Mr. Wiranto, you are now number 3. But there will be second round. So you don't have to chase, you don't have to exit SBY. You just have to pass Megawati. So you are number 2, and you are going to the second round. But then Pak Wiranto, Mr. Wiranto, failed to do so. So finally he became number 3, and he didn't manage to go to the second round. If he goes to the second round, I believe Wiranto have the opportunity to beat SBY and become the president. Okay, we don't have much time. There are still many to tell. It will be printed and distributed to you. Let me give you one last example. In March 2009, preliminary to 2009 presidential election, Taufik Kemas, the husband of Megawati, asked me to conduct survey. He said, Kodari, what about PDIP? Is it going to win the election? And who is the presidential candidate? we conduct the survey and I make a report to Pak Taufik. Mr. Taufik, PDIP is going to lose. It is number 3. Number 1 is Democrat, the party of SBY. And SBY is so strong. You cannot beat him. Almost impossible to beat him. Mr. Taufik Kemas is a tactician. So he said, why do I have to compete with SBY? I'm going to lose anyway. So to go, I hope you can understand my presentation and you can learn something from this presentation. Thank you very much. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I just get my pen.
Thank you, Mr. Kodari. I think your presentation is fascinating. How Indonesian politicians 10 years ago, 15 years ago, I should say, when the reform was started, using traditional means, traditional way of thinking that are so similar in many developing countries and perhaps in Bangladesh as well, to how elaborate in the 2004, beyond 2004 era. Now we have about 20 minutes for question and answer. I do have some questions here already, but we have room for one questions from the audience. Professor, you raise your hands.
Quite in depth. But I have visited Bali anyway, and I have got more than one question, and that will be very precise. Number one thing I wanted to know, in your surveys, how is the preciseness of it? What is the confidence level, or what is the preciseness of your survey? That's one statistic I want to know. And in Indonesia, is there any other organization like yours one, which is also doing this survey? And whether those surveys, do they conflict or they come up with the same sort of findings? That's one thing. And the third point is that, how are you funded? Who funded, bearing the expenditure for this sort of research? And then my fourth point is that, how the political parties take it. You mentioned something about that. But is there any occasion that some parties finding the result of your survey or contrary to their interest, they're blending you as the agent of some parties, working for some parties? Are you ever classified like that? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor. Not bad. Mr. Anam Mahmud, Nielsen Bangladesh, he asked for, if I can summarize the questions, what can we do to popularize a public opinion survey? So what's the secret to convince political parties, government stakeholders to do survey? Please.
Okay. What did you say your name, sir? Basa. Thank you, Professor Basa, for the very good question. Our level of confidence for the survey depends on the number of the respondents. Usually, for conducting nationwide survey, we use 1,200 respondents, and the level of confidence is around. The level of confidence is 95%, and the margin of error is around 3%. So out of 95 events, the margin of error will be around 3%. So if you get the vote for Golkar Party, for example, 3%, then plus minus 3%, it will be around 27 to 33%. Yeah. And for gubernatorial survey at the provincial level, we usually use 800 respondents. And for 800 respondents, we calculated the margin of error was around 4.9%. Yeah. And it can be, we have applied the survey to a variety of provinces. There are small provinces like Jambi, for example, in Indonesia, which population was only around 1.5 million people. But there are also provinces in West Java, which population was more than 30 million people. So we use the survey for both provinces, and we can get a satisfying result. It means that we get the picture of people's opinion, then we can predict the winner for the local elections. As for the second question, yes, there are many. Yes, there are many polling organizations right now in Indonesia. As you will read in my paper, as printed by the DI, there are now more and more polling organizations. But then, yeah, sometimes we meet each other when we conduct data field result. But then it doesn't matter actually. You know, I established my own polling company, which is Indobarometer, because I have my own networks. I know many politicians, and when I was in my previous organization, there was an awkward situation because my organization already have a client, but then I have a friend who wanted me for help. So instead of not helping my friend, I set up my own company, and then I can help my friends. Sometimes findings or result of survey from different organizations differ to each other. Yeah, differ to each other. This is interesting, and this is also an issue in Indonesia. But then I have to admit, out of many political polling in Indonesia, some are good, some are bad. Yeah, some are reliable, are using reliable methodology. They are also having good quality of data collection management, and they are independent, or they are they are objective. Yeah. But some some polling organization lacking in this matter, this issue. They don't know methodology. They pretend as if they know it. Yeah. But then they actually do not know, or they are prone, they are vulnerable to intervention. But I believe, yeah, actually, as in many other areas and also in many other cases, the standard for political polling, the one who knows methodology, the one who are independent, they will eventually get trusted by the people, by the media, and also by the client, the political parties, or by the candidates. Because clients from many political parties. So I have clients from Golkar, from PDIP, from PKS, and etc. So I'm like a doctor, you know. My patients with various background come to me. They believe me because I try to maintain my standard and also my objectivity. So actually, the key players, political parties and politicians, they know who we are. They realize the reputation of the political firm. So if they want to get accurate, qualified, and objective result, they will eventually come to us. In other situations, sometimes they need survey that is in accordance with their political agenda, and they will go to that other organization. Yeah, sometimes. Yeah. But most of the time, they will need high quality survey. So I would say, yeah, the biggest portion of the projects will go to the qualified polling organization. Yeah. So it will come back. It will depend on your own reputation. If you maintain your reputation, you will survive. And we have this kind of example in other area. You know, in 1990, in early reform era, the liberation era in 1998, there was a booming of press, of the media. Suddenly there were so many newspapers. But the one that exists and survive until now are the main media, the one that adhere to the standard of journalism. So I believe that as long as you adhere to the basic principle of scientific research or surveys, and you maintain your objectivity, you will prevail eventually. And then, how are you funded? Yeah, funded by our clients, by politicians. I mentioned to you earlier that in every year there are at least 125 local government elections. In every elections there are at least 3 candidates. Yeah. So you multiply 1,000 to 100, 100 to 25, multiply 3, and you have many potential clients in the country. Yeah. Indobarometer, for example, conduct perhaps at least 60 surveys per year, at least, yeah, yeah, maybe 100 at least a year. So pretty busy actually, pretty busy actually. And then proceeding the national election like 2013, right now, you know that for candidate of central parliament, you will have 77 electoral college or electoral district all over Indonesia. Yeah. The number of MP as total is around 560. There are now 12 political parties who is going to join the election. Each party is allowed to nominate 10 candidates. So you just multiply 77 electoral districts to 12 political parties to at least 10 candidates from each political parties. So you have a market of more than 7,000 candidates for for candidates of MP at the national level. You do not mention the candidates for the local level, but they rarely use it. Yeah, the one who rarely use it are the people who are aspiring for national parliament. Yeah. But it is funded by the clients. And
if I can, add the questions, because doing surveys is not cheap. And why do politicians in Indonesia spend money doing surveys while they can just spend it on banners or social assistance?
Okay, going to election is like going to war. Yeah, peaceful war. So in order to win the war, you need to know the situation. You need to have a map. You have to know your weaknesses, your strength, and you have to know your opponent's weakness and strength. In order to get vote by the people, or electability as we call it in Indonesia, you first have to be known by the people, and then you must be favored by the people. There is no way you can you have information about your name recognition and your favorability rating as well as your electability other than conducting survey. So, like I told you earlier, Yudhoyono cannot win the elections in 2003 or 2004 if his name recognition was still around 60%. How did he know that his name recognition is that low? Is by using survey. Only by looking at our presentation, and then he was awake. Oh, okay, I am only number 2, and my name recognition is 60%. So I know that my problem is name recognition. I have advantage of high favorability, high preferences. Yeah, high preferences. But that is not enough. So that also happened with the candidate of local governments, and then also with the candidate of MP. So in order to craft a winning strategy, in order knowing what to do with the campaign, one must first get the information on what to do. Yeah, that is the importance of survey. So I have 3 steps or 3 formulas of winning the election. First, you have to identify the vote. Second, you have to intervene the vote. And third, you have to guard your vote. Before you intervene the vote, before you have before you conducting campaign, before you prepare for socialization, prepare for campaign materials, you first have to conduct surveys. Only by looking at survey you can craft the correct and the suitable strategy. If your intervention is correct and that it getting the right impact, your electability will go ahead, will improve, will increase. And then when you are number one, you have to guard your victory, so it will not be manipulated by the commission or other parties. And then the last one, is there any contrary reaction from the political parties or the presidency candidate? Yes, the answer is yes. And it is happening every day. So you know the politician, yeah. When the good is news, they say, yeah, you are very good. Yeah, they prove it. And Selinda also experienced. You know, United States has known polling or survey for many years. Yeah, for more than a half century. But she does still experience that kind of comment. So you have to accept it. Yeah, yeah. Do not take it too seriously. Yeah. Do not take it too seriously. So just go ahead with your survey. As long as you conduct the survey methodology correct, as long as you are objective, there is no need to be afraid of. In many occasions, I just confront them. Okay, if you don't believe me, let's just see the result. Let's just see the result. Data will not lie to you. The people will not lie to you. One thing that is important, at the beginning of survey in Indonesia, some people were skeptical, Selinda. Even fellow who was a graduate from United States, he said, "Oh, do you think you can conduct surveys in Indonesia? You know that the people here are less educated, and then they are not open to sensitive question like which party do you vote for, whose president candidate do you prefer." But it was proven to be wrong at all. Yeah, because first, the people are not that reluctant. Yeah, they are open. They are actually open. When they ask the question, which party do you vote for? The majority of respondents will answer. Yeah, when they do not answer, most of the time, it's not because they are shy or they are reluctant, but because they haven't made up their mind. They haven't decided. I don't know yet. And then, as to the social status of the population, it does not really matter. I told my fellow politician, you are big wrong if you think the people of Indonesia are stupid. Even though 60% of Indonesian people consisted of people who graduated from elementary school, and only around 5 to 6% are graduated from the university. When we ask to them, are you satisfied with the government? Who do you think is the best presidential candidate? They can answer. We are not talking about the high-ranking rationality, the rationality that is owned by people who graduated from the university, the rationality, the intellectuality that is owned by the doctors or the masters. We are talking about bounded rationality. Bounded rationality. They are rational as to what they know and what they feel. That's the beauty of public opinion. Yeah, you don't have to have high education in order to answer who is your favorite president, what do you think of the government, etc., etc. So we have proven that not only in United States, not only in Europe, but also in Asia, that public opinion research can work. And I believe if there is an opportunity, I will go to Africa and I will prove that public opinion research can be done and if Africa. And I can prove also that it can be done in Bangladesh. Inshallah.
Thank you. questions here, and but some of them will be discussed in the following sessions. But unfortunately, again, we want to bring a lot of experience in just one day. Perhaps this is a lesson I already learned. Maybe we should have a longer sessions. We make this a 2 days conference in the future. Thank you so much for sharing your experience. Even as an Indonesian, I learned so many things just now. So many things I didn't know before. One more time, a big round of applause for Mr. Kodari. Unfortunately, Mr. Kodari arrived late last night and then has to fly back again this afternoon. I guess when you have 300 clients waiting for you. All right. Thank you so much. Okay, I have a good news and a bad news. Which one do you want, the audience want to hear first?
Bad news.
The bad news, okay. The bad news is we have to postpone lunch for a few minutes. So that's the bad news. Originally we were going to do it at 12:30, but now probably 1 o'clock or maybe 1:15. I hope, my sincere apology, I hope that's okay. Yes? Okay. The good news is we were expecting 160 people during a normal situation. And then when the strike was announced, we logically reduced our prediction to maybe 100, 120. But I just got a report of the actual number of participants. Can anybody guess? We have more than 200 people participating. So thank you very much for this. Yes. So I would suggest we continue with Selinda's session and then maybe take a half-time break for lunch and then we can continue with Q&A.
They can go in the morning.
Oh, okay, they go through one. Okay.
Okay. One more announcement. In the beginning, when we do a registration, there are some of us who get a form, a small quiz, that will help us understand feedbacks from the participants. Please kindly fill those out and then hand it to our colleagues here. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, Selinda just made a very good suggestion. What if we take 5 minutes bathroom breaks before we continue?
It takes a woman to suggest that, right?
Okay.
So we're going to start in 5 minutes. I still see some of us. Please can you take your seat?
By the parliament, they need to know some things. When expected by the people, they want to know what the people think. That's the first.
Okay.
The second, we have to.
Thank you.
We have to prove.
So I was looking at Selinda's CV last night and earlier this morning, and I was trying to highlight, the key points I want to share. But I'm afraid I'm going to take the whole session to highlight her experience. And my father once told me, the best introduction is the shortest one. So I'm going to try this one and see whether it's worked. Ladies and gentlemen, the godmother of political polls in the U.S., Selinda.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And it is such a pleasure to be here. And I'm very excited about sharing with you and following the two presentations, which I think really laid out the utility of polling with some kind of nuts and bolts information on polling. And I want to take my colleague up on his suggestion when he said, that we can pull